Hi, I'm Pete, and I'm a community worker here at Peterborough Public Health. Today we're going to learn how to braise. Braising is an excellent skill to learn and develop at home because you can use less expensive cuts of meat and achieve tender, delicious results. Braising is cooking meats or vegetables on low heat covered with a little bit of liquid. You can use a Dutch oven, you can use a braiser, or you could use a slow cooker to braise your food. Today we're going to be braising a top blade roast, which is from the chuck or the shoulder of a cow. This is a tougher cut of meat and it does require braising to get an excellent result. The first thing you want to do before you begin cooking and throughout the cooking process is make sure that you wash your hands to minimize any kind of potential for cross-contamination. Braising meats actually uses two cooking methods, a dry heat method and a moist heat method. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to season the meat. So we're going to use a little bit of salt, crushed black pepper, and get that all over the meat. A little bit of vegetable oil into the bottom of this pan, and as I mentioned, it's very important that you get the pan really hot to help brown the meat and sear it on all sides. We're going to start to brown our meat. Once it's really nice and brown and seared, let it just sear. Again, too, it's really important that your pan is really good and hot first so that you get that searing action. You can see this little bit of brown, the starch here, that is concentrated flavor. We call that caramelization. We're gonna use that to help us build a really nice sauce for our pot roast. So as you can see, our meat is all browned on all sides, which is really good. So I'm now going to remove this meat and just set it on the counter. We're going to add a mirepoix, which is carrots, onions, and celery. We're going to brown these vegetables off and we're going to be using this in our pot roast. But as you can see here, these vegetables will help to pick up some of these brown bits on the bottom of the pan, and again, that will help us to build our sauce. I'm also going to add a little bit of tomato paste. This will help thicken our sauce a little bit and help us to develop a nice, flavorful sauce. Next, we're going to deglaze the bottom of this pan. So what that means is adding a little bit of liquid, and that will help to lift off that caramelization that we've developed by searing the meat. Now you can use a little bit of water, you could use stock, or there are other liquids you could use as well. I'm gonna just use a little bit of beef stock, okay? So we're gonna add just a little bit, and this is gonna deglaze the bottom of this pan. Like so, and you can see you just use your wooden spoon to help lift that. So we've deglazed our pan. Now I'm going to add the meat back into the pan. And now I'm going to add more liquid. We don't want to add too much liquid. We certainly don't want to completely cover the meat. Halfway, 1/3 to halfway is sufficient, depending on how much sauce you're going to need. I'm using beef stock. You can see here our liquid is starting to simmer. I don't want it boiling, just a gentle simmer is fine. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add my aromatics. In this case, I'm gonna be using some bay leaf and I'm gonna use a little bit of freshly washed thyme. So I'm gonna add that in. And now we're going to cover. Okay, so again, you need a tight fitting lid. Now, if you're using a Dutch oven or a braiser, you could do this on the stovetop, or you could cook it in the oven. If you're using a slow cooker, you'll just proceed with the slow cooker. I'm gonna use the oven method to braise this, and I'm gonna place it into the oven between 325 degrees to 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 2.5 to 3 hours. So our meat has been braising now for 3 hours. We're going to pull the brazier out and we're gonna check our meat. Be very careful because it's extremely hot. And be very careful taking the lid off because you could get burned from the steam. So be very careful. We know that this meat has been thoroughly cooked throughout, so we don't really have to check with a thermometer. But one thing we want to do to see if the meat is done is to check to see if it's fork tender, and we'll just check right now. So if the fork can go in and come out with little resistance, that's an indication that it's done. And that would appear evident here. So now what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna transfer carefully this meat onto this plate here, and then we're gonna cover it up and keep it nice and warm. Just remove some of that excess fat. Tilt your pan up. Remember, this pot is still hot, so be very careful. Another thing you could do too is you could just strain this liquid through a sieve and then pour it back into the pot and finish your sauce, which I will demonstrate here. So just strain the little bits out of the liquid. So I removed the vegetables and strained the liquid through a sieve. And so I'm gonna very carefully just and I've removed skimmed off the fat. And now I'm gonna transfer the liquid, our beautiful savory liquid, which will be our sauce, back into this pot. And I'm gonna reduce it down a little bit. I'll add a little bit of tomato paste as well, just to help thicken it up.
All right.
So we reduced our sauce a little bit, our liquid, and it's delicious, and that will accompany our meat. And now we're gonna slice into our meat. Now make sure that you have a damp, clean paper towel underneath your cutting board. We've kept our roast nice and warm, our pot roast, and this is gonna be delicious. And we've allowed this to rest a little bit, and we're just gonna slice into this. Oh, this is absolutely perfect. Look at this. Very pleased with the results here. And just lay it on your plate. Our little pot roast here. And we've got whole grains. We've got some of the lovely potatoes that we had. And just a little dollop of the sauce. That will keep it nice and tender and moist.